What's up, everybody? This is Suleiman from SAZ, and this is the show where we talk about the money in business and the business of money. And today we're going to be talking about how you can create your own financial budget. So stay tuned. So, what is a budget? A budget, in simple terms, is actually a plan for resource reception, allocation, and finally, expenditure. So I'm emphasizing on these three key things because this is what a budget is. Majority of us, when we hear a budget, we only think about the expense part of the budget. But we never think about how do we actually get this money so that we can spend it, and how do we actually allocate it in these different categories of expenses. So for today, we'll be talking about budget and budgeting. There are many types of budgets out there, and in the business realm, you can see them coming into action. So you might have a cash budget, you might have a labor budget, a financial budget, a production budget. And us, as SAZ Business Consult, where we do these consulting services to businesses, we usually create a master budget, which encompasses all these other budgets in order to give them a full budget for the financial year. Now, before we go on to understanding how you can create your own financial budget, it's important to understand why do we actually need a budget. Number one, a budget tells you how much cash you actually have. Secondly, it will tell you how much you actually require in order to finish that period you're calculating that budget for. Number three, it helps you reduce and even at times avoid debt. Number four, you can use a budget in order for you to make better and informed decisions. And lastly, you can use a budget as a tool to reach your goals. So there are different terminologies that we need to understand before we go ahead to start creating your budget. Now, the first terminology that we'll be using is needs. And then the next one is wants. I want to group them together and explain to you both at the same time. So there are these two things which are largely expenses. There's needs and there's wants. Needs are the primary essentials that you need in order for you to function, or if it's your business, then for your business to function. While wants are those things that you think you need, but you actually don't need, and without them, you can still function. So these wants are the things that you would like to have or acquire. Now, we need to make a clear distinctions between the two, because when budgeting, we need to separate the two and know that this is a want or this is a need so that we can act upon them correctly. The other terminology that we'll be talking about is savings. So savings is you taking either money or any other asset, putting it aside so that you can use it at a later stage or in the future. So now that you have understood these terminologies, let's dive deep into the frameworks that people use in order to make effective budgets for themselves. So there are actually four main frameworks that people use in order for them to budget. Now, the first one is the 70-20-10 rule. The second one is the 50-30-20 rule. The third one, the 30-30-30-10 rule. And the last one is the 50-40-10 rule. Now you might be wondering, what are these 50, 40, 30, 10, 20? Well, they actually represent the percentage of your total income that you will allocate to the different categories. Now, let's start with the first one, the 70-20-10 rule. Let's look at an example of a person earning 1,000. So from his total income of 1,000, he'll be required to take 70% of 1,000, which is 700. Now, this 700, he is required to make it work for him to cover all his expenses. And here, when we're saying all his expenses, we actually mean the needs and the wants. So they cannot exceed the 700. Secondly, he'll take 20% of the 1,000, which is 200, and use it as a savings fund, as well as he can take some money out of there and pay off debts if he has debts. Because as we all know, we need to pay our debts before we even start investing or saving money. Then he'll take 10% of the 1,000, which equals to 100, and this one he can do any investment purposes as long as he doesn't touch it until retirement. So he's also building his retirement fund with the 10%. The second framework that we'll be looking at is the 50-30-20 rule. And basically what it states is that you take 50% of your total income and give it to the needs. And then you'll take 30% of your total income and allocate it to your wants. And lastly, you'll take 20% and allocate it to your investments as well as your savings. The third framework that people use is the 30-30-30-10 rule. Now, this rule actually states that the first 30% of your total income, you allocate it to your housing. And when I say housing, it might be your rent or even your mortgage. The second 30% is allocated to your needs. So this is where your food as well as your clothing will fall into. The next 30% is for your savings and investment purposes. And then lastly, we have the 10% that will be allocated to your wants. So it's that new watch or it's that dinner date that you always wanted. The last framework that we'll be looking at, which is my personal favorite and the one that I'm recommending to you, is the 50-40-10 framework. Now this rule states that you take 50% of your total income and put it into savings and investment purposes. Then you'll take 40% of your total income, and this is the one you'll use for your needs. So what you need to eat, where you're staying, transport, stuff of the like. And lastly, 10% of your total income is the maximum allowable amount for you to spend on your wants. Depending on any framework that you decide to use, you need to understand that these frameworks are based on your total income. And your total income is actually any amount of money that you either earn, get, or gain. So this is where your calculations will be based upon. So we want to know, which framework do you think will work best for you? Let us know in the comment section below. If you found this video helpful, give us a like and don't forget to subscribe if you haven't already. You can also share this video with at least one person so that we can share the knowledge. And until the next time, build your future today.